Sooner Nation, what is up tonight? Sooner Surge at 6, going to talk about some news from the day regards to the scheduling in 2024. But before we get to that, please subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date with the latest Sooner information and content as we provide that on the daily. So let's get started here. You're about to see and hear the new SEC schedule that's going to be released any minute right now. But we did have word earlier today that the first SEC game will be Alabama at OU. As
I
far
don't know.
as OU's,
I don't know if they confirmed that it's going to be the first game, but it's definitely going to be in Norman, is what I've heard.
sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Alabama will travel to Norman their first year in the SEC, so it will be a home game for OU. Yeah, sorry about saying that that's going to be the first one, but
And
yeah, you're
I said last night on our video with Jackson that that was kind of my hot take, is that OU would open SEC in 2024 with Alabama in Norman. So that could be happening. We could see it here in a little bit. But guys, this has got to be the biggest home game in Norman since, what would you say?
it's weird that what's weird to me is, we're now calling that a conference game, because if you look at years past, you think, well, what's been the biggest out of conference games for OU in Norman? You had the Notre Dame game a few years back, but if you want to go about biggest games in Norman, they've almost always been in conference, which now this will be a conference opponent. Alabama will be a conference opponent. So going right there. But 2000, you had the 1-3 matchup, right? The year that OU won the national title, that was 1-3 Nebraska, Oklahoma. People forget that was 1-3, I think. So that's a huge one. You had the ones in the 70s where there were a couple of 1-2, I believe, OU Nebraska. OU Nebraska has been on the, as far as top games in Norman, probably 4 to 6 times. You had the jump around game, right, was a big game. I think it was 2-5. Texas Tech was
Yeah.
ranked 2 that year.
But
That was 2008, I believe.
Yeah, but see, when I think about big games, I don't even think of that Texas Tech game. I know they were ranked high, but I'm
I
talking
know.
premier matchups. Like when you look at premier teams coming into Norman, here's what I can think of. I can think of Ohio State, Notre Dame. Notre Dame was a huge game, if you remember, and they kind of ended up beating OU pretty handily there last time. So you got Ohio State, Notre Dame. You had Miami coming to town. Remember the Miami game? You had Florida State.
Yeah.
They had a home and home with Florida State. And then they had the home and home with Tennessee. So when I
Tennessee.
like premier matchups that aren't Big 12 related, those are the kind of the teams I think about. And I think this is going to be the biggest, I think, since Ohio State came to Norman, or the Notre Dame. Both those games were premier matchups, if you remember right. But they aren't the name as far as Bama. They're the name as far as blue blood, but Bama is just so, everybody's been wanting Bama, as far as.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I saw where Bama got Georgia too already first year. So they're going to have Georgia and OU in that first SEC year. But
The SEC is going to make a killing based off these matchups too. But, you're right when talking about the blue bloods. And look, I was a huge Big 12 supporter, but come on. Those teams, like you said, are not what we're going to see in the SEC. And as far as types of just monumental programs and blue blood program matchups. But, this is going to be very interesting as 2024 hits, because if you see, let's see what OU does this year and what Alabama does this year, that's going to set the stage for that matchup in 2024. Because if OU has a great year, and Bama, I'm sure, will, it's going to be a top 5 matchup early on.
yeah,
Maybe early on.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting tonight here in a couple minutes, after this video, when we actually see the rest of their opponents. It's going to be very interesting to see what other maybe premier matchups you get. I would think they'll probably stay away from Georgia since they got Bama. Georgia got Texas. We saw that today. It's a huge matchup. We also saw Texas and Texas A&M are playing. Those are kind of being confirmed. But, we'll find out here in a little bit the rest of the schedule. But, man, I'm just so pumped for Bama the first year. I didn't know how, when they first announced how long it would be before OU and Bama hit up. But, man, let's get it started right off the bat with just a monster game. And, guys, listeners, the games that are going to be in the SEC are going to be monster every week, and that's what's crazy is the premier matchups. You're going to have Bama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, Florida. I mean,
Arkansas, man, for the locality of that is going to be a big one for fans.
But I'd be interested to know from the fans listening here is this OU Bama matchup in Norman. We saw Joe Castiglione say today that the people that are waiting to get tickets they'll be gone. Like, do not wait. I mean, everything is going to be so sold out so quickly. So get on them, get all your tickets, season tickets, whatever it is. I'm sure season tickets are already sold out, so it's just the other games. But I saw his quote today. But man,
you guys did hit on it last night. I know Jackson mentioned it, but yeah, make Lindsey Street great again is going to have to. It's going to have to happen with what's happening and what we're going to see as far as tailgate wise moving forward.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, can you imagine OU, Alabama, 6 o'clock kick or 7 o'clock kick at night?
Well, I'm interested in schedule release. Like, I know we're going to get opponents, but timing of when these games are going to happen, not as far as time of day in the season. Is this OU Bama going to be early on? Is it going to be later in the season?
I don't know if we'll know all that tonight. I don't know how.
I don't think they're releasing.
We're just going to know the 8 teams probably, and
then they're all going to get every SEC opponent will get OU or Texas. Right? That's correct.
That's Dave from Sankey, correct? Yeah. So it'll be interesting. So here in about a couple minutes, you'll be seeing that. But we wanted to put this video out before, as our senior surge at 6 to talk about the Bama game, and love to have your comments in here. Is this the biggest game since what? What game in Norman, other than OU Alabama coming up in 24? What was the next biggest game recently? I mentioned Ohio State. I mentioned Notre Dame. There's some other ones. Please leave a comment. Tell us what you think, and if you're excited for this. And I think that's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe, and talk to you next time. Boomer.